Hey, what's up, guys? Node Investor here. Happy Friday, maybe Saturday, wherever you guys are. Kicking off the weekend with a live stream. Howdy from Ohio. What's up, Wendell? We're going to be looking at Bitcoin, of course. Primarily going to be talking about the daily chart, this big picture view. We had the breakout, which we were looking at last week. Obviously, had a pretty good run, an interesting week to say the least, with Iraq and Iran and the news and just always so much, the geopolitical stuff. But nonetheless, at the end of the day, looking at the charts, the setup was there. We had the breakout, we had confirmation, made for a very nice run, hit the first target around that 84.50, which I was looking for, and we got the pullback. Now the big question is that the end of the pullback, or are we going to see some more downside? So I'm going to look at that, both levels to be watching, both on the downside and the upside. Melissa in the house. How are you, my friend? We got Germany here, Mississippi. Oh man, we got a lot of good folks coming in. So thanks for joining here. Wishing you all a happy day, happy weekend. And let's see here, we'll get to it. So, all right, looking at the BTC here first, we've seen quite the moves here. The last couple of days have been just so volatile. If you go to the lower time frames, right, 1 hour chart, something like that, all over the place. Yesterday, I was looking at this key support level around that 80, what was it, 86, 8, or excuse me, 86, 78.50. Looking like it was ready to go. We had the shakeout, then a quick pop, and very near that 8K. Actually went over 8K very briefly, and then just quickly got slammed right back down. It started to roll over here this morning, heading up into the morning, and then just boom, popped off that low. So pretty wild action, very volatile if you've been trying to trade some of the lower time frames. 4 hour chart, not too bad here. Did break below these moving averages, but the main thing to be watching is that daily time frame, the bigger level here. And it's at its core, right, it's pretty basic. Not a lot of really complicated indicators or anything that I'm using here. I mean, it's just pure horizontal price support, resistance, that sort of thing. And so, looking at the horizontal price point, 7,600 was that key breakout point that we were looking for. Finally popped above that. On the upside, I was using a Fibonacci ratio, a bounce target for that first target, and it was really more of a zone, to be fair. I was looking for, somewhere in this range as the first target, 8,400 to around 8,600. But it did land right in that point. Now, granted, that came on the back of some geopolitical news and all that caused that last little bit of a spike. And notice the volume spiked right into that. I wouldn't call it a blow off top, but I mean, it was the end of this first big leg up, right? And that was a pretty big leg when you look at the distance it covered price wise, right? Wick to wick, which of course, I mean, no one's ever going to get in at the wick bottom or out at the wick top. But looking at it from a point to point there, that was a 23% move in a relatively short period of time, right? You're talking about a week's worth of time, which is a big move for something as as large of a big cap as BTC here. But now we're seeing this pullback and coming right back down to this first support level, which also, if I zoom in here, happens to be the daily 10 EMA. And so you see the 10 EMA there, you got the 22 EMA there, with the value zone being that space between them two. And that also happens to line up with the horizontal price support now. So prior resistance now becomes support on the way down. And it's never going to be like an exact number, right? It doesn't have to come right to that dollar and then bounce right off. I mean, it could undercut it, but ideally what you look for is a daily close. You don't want to see a daily close much below that. So at this point, 7,500 would probably be my max number that I want to see this thing drop. If it starts to live below that number, it doesn't look quite as bullish. Right now, the chart, the setup still looks very bullish. By definition, this would be considered a throwback, right? So you had the breakout. Now you're getting a throwback into that breakout point. The question now becomes, does it bounce off of here and continue and make that second leg? The second leg generally should take out the prior high, and so we would be looking for a new relative high. My target on the upside, if we do see another breakout here, another bounce off of this level, would be around 8,600. That's my first target on the way up. Again, that's just using pure price support resistance. That was a prior pivot point. You can see it back here in October. That was also a little bit of a consolidation before it broke down here in mid-November. And so that would be my first target on the way up. Going back to the fib retracement levels, if we look at some of those key points going wick to wick here, that would be so the 50% is what that last target was. So using the fib levels, then I'd be going with the next ratio. So that'd be around the 618 level, basically around 9K, 89 and change, around 9K. That's how I'd be doing. Hey, Andrew, or Anton, excuse me. Thank you for subscribing. I did see that come through. I do send those out manually, so I will be sending your email out shortly. So that you'll get an invite to the Slack group here today, right after this stream. So that's what I'm looking at there. That's the next upside targets on the daily. Now this would be a daily swing trade, if you will, right? And so from a trading perspective, if I were approaching this as a fresh entry right here, there's a couple of ways I would do this. Let's throw some. I'm going to take the fib levels off just so it doesn't get too messy here. And so let's throw some tools. And so let's say I entered here, didn't wait for a pullback or anything else, just entered here. 7,500 would probably be my max. If you wanted to keep it a tighter stop, I would say maybe like 7,630 or so, just slightly below today's swing low. But if you did, so let's go with that. If you did that, that's a super tight stop. And it hit the first target, 8,600, right? That's right around there. Then that would be about a 2.2R multiple. So meaning, risking, 3.8% to the downside, getting about 2.5% to the upside on that target. Now, if it goes to the next level, you're going up another 12% from here. That'd be about a 3R multiple, much more attractive at that point. But all around, I mean, not a bad scenario to be looking at. And if you can look at an entry closer to that breakout point, if it does slightly pull back again, even better, right? But if it only gets to that, let's say it makes a double top here, and just, let me go like this here real quick. Let's say you get this scenario where you pull back, rallies, makes a double top, and then it's going to start doing one of those. Then that's not even a 2R multiple with that wide of a stop, so not as attractive. So it just kind of depends on what your rules are, your risk-reward ratios, and all that. For me, 2 to 1 is my minimum that I like to look for on a trade. Do I always wait until I get exactly my 2 to 1 and take profit? No, of course not. I certainly factor in things like price action, that sort of thing. Once we hit, let's say it starts to bounce a little bit and starts approaching this little bit of a resistance and maybe stalls into that zone, which would not be surprising. It's oftentimes the way I manage those type of trades is I'll take a little off there, take some profits, or do a combination of both, maybe take some profits, tighten the stop to break even, something like that. Just in case that's it and it pulls back, at least it's not a big losing trade. If anything, it's a flat trade, maybe even a little bit of a small gain. But that's, there's 100 ways to do this. There's no right or wrong way. It's kind of what works for you. How much time do you have, to manage your trading? I saw on Twitter somewhere somebody was posting, their winning streak, and then when you look at the details, it was all plus or minus $30 trades. And for me, that's just not my style, right? Going plus or minus $30 on Bitcoin, it's a lot of work for relatively small. Now, granted, if you're using a ton of leverage and all that, you got to manage it much tighter, and maybe at that point it's worth your while. But everyone's different. Now, for me, when it comes to that quick scalping and trading, my market of choice for that is the stock market. I'll play the open generally and use some leverage there. And 10 cents, 20 cents, 30 cents really starts to add up when you're buying 500 shares, 1,000 shares at a time. So that's what I'm looking for there. All right, so that's BTC on the way up. Let's dial it in here a little bit. Just scrolling down. Again, it is choppy waters. Could this just be a lower high and we're breaking back down below the support? Yeah, absolutely, right? Just something to make note of. On the 1 hour charts, I mean, that was kind of a nice little rally, a pretty good reaction off of that prior support. On the 4 hour chart, getting back above the moving averages, that's good. On this pullback, maybe a good secondary entry again. tight stop. Don't want to see it get much below that 7,600, at most 7,500. Below that, then you could see a deeper retracement. We never looked at the pullback on this guy here. Let's see. If I do that, came right to the 50%, and then your 618, if it decides to pull back a little bit further, give you a second bottom, right? You have that 1-2 double bottom low. Then 618 puts you at 75.22, so right around that 7,500 number that I really don't want to see it get much below. If it does, then that could be the end of this move as far as this breakout reversal pattern is concerned, right? We're all looking at this daily chart, potential reversal pattern forming here off the lows, but hey, just like we saw back here, you had that 40% move, massive, and it just faded, didn't turn into anything, made new lower lows. So could this be a lower high, and then we're going to start getting, another drop? That's always a possibility, and certainly can't write that off. The fact that we've already come off of a pretty good percentage from the most recent swing high that we saw here several months, 6-7 months ago now, gives a little bit more positivity to the fact that this could be a low being established. But heading into the halving, which is still what, 5 months out, 4 months out, that's just something to keep in mind. Longer term, I think that's going to be bullish for Bitcoin all around. In between, right, the little wiggles, the ups and downs, the chop, much harder to navigate, certainly. And I'm not going to be one of those that come out and say, oh, trading is easy and this is super simple. Anyone who's actually tried this and trying to make profits out of the market swings can tell you that it's not as easy as it appears. And the biggest challenge, honestly, I'm gonna do a little video on this later, because I was putting some notes together, and as I started to think through some of these things, I thought, this actually might be a pretty good little video. But I wrote some thoughts down as far as some common trading pitfalls, and just reading off the list here real quick. Bad position sizing, right? Too often traders will go too heavy, and so when they take a loss, it affects them bigger than they should have. Over trading, right? Not having a trading plan, no defined strategy, just kind of getting in and out at the whims of the market, chasing every up candle, selling on every down candle, or vice versa if you're shorting, right? Over trading is probably one of the bigger reasons for equity drawdown, in my opinion, just because you're in and out a lot, more than you should. There's commissions that start to pile up, and it's just a big common pitfall. Impatience is another one, right? Jumping in from one trade to the next, not letting your trade work. You see something else moving, you close out your trade, you jump on that one stalls out, you close that one out, you jump on another one, right? Just crazy impatience and over trading. Another common pitfall, taking profits too soon. Maybe you have a target in mind, but it starts to pull back along the way. You say, nah, I gotta preserve my gains, and you get out only to see it run again. Another one is giving back all the gains. Let's say it hits your target, you never book anything along the way, and it just fully retraces, right? So you want to certainly lock in some gains. Letting losses run, not respecting your stops, and just letting things pull back into the red and then hoping for it to turn around. Doubling down. When you have a losing trade, you're thinking, oh, I'm just going to double down here. When it pops, I'll be back to break even. And then, of course, chasing and having FOMO and just not, just being overly emotional and not really having a plan. And those are all some common pitfalls. And the interesting thing is most of them are often psychological. Rarely are they, I don't understand my indicators, or rarely are they, man, my TA is just really bad. It's generally, most of you guys have pretty good technical analysis and good charting and all that, but so often it's the psychology and the risk management and not being able to stick to the disciplines and the rules that get us as traders, myself included, right? I mean, it's just a constant learning process in this arena here, and the markets will quickly discipline you. So that's I think that's worthy of a little bit of a video, so I might have to put some of that together here. So that's BTC here. We'll see where this one goes over the weekend. Those are really my two big numbers. So if you're just joining us, some thoughts here on the downside, right where the moving average is, today's swing low around 76 and change, down to around 75 at the most. I want to see it hold there. On the upside, which this is looking like a pretty good throwback on the daily, if it can close in the green today, then I'm thinking we can see some more upside testing. Obviously, the first swing high is the target, but above that, 8,600 would be my next targets, and then above that, around 89.50, maybe 9K. That lines up well with a good round number, as well as the 618 retracement on the bounce. And so that's kind of the next two big numbers. So on the upside, 8,600, and then 9K on the downside. We'll call it 75.50 just to be right in the middle there. And so those are the two biggies on the BTC side. But you know, the daily chart still got to give the benefit of the doubt to the buyers. We'll see if we can see a little bit of a rally here. Yeah, there's some geopolitical. Maybe it was Iran. Maybe that was it. That's the end of the move. But it looks pretty good all around. You know, let's look at gold real quick before I hop over to the rest of the markets here. Oops. Just because I know that some of you guys are following that, and we're also seeing some correlation here. And so here's the breakout that we saw in gold on the daily, the big run up, kind of the Iran news, the big sell-off reversal here on volume. I don't actually have volume on here. Let's look at it on the GLD. There we go. You can see the volume coming in here on that selling day. Going back to the gold chart though, it did pull right back to the 10 EMA, just like Bitcoin, and also prior breakout point. My first target on that run up way back when this first broke out last year was at 1550. Notice that was the prior breakout point, pulled right back, trying to bounce off of that. If we go to the weekly chart, 1550 was a target just because it was prior support here, pretty easy horizontal price target. And sure enough, when we saw that breakout last year, that's right where it paused before pulling back, came to the 22 EMA on the weekly, and here we are seeing a little bit of a rally, but it is selling off on that rally. So we'll see if that gold trade is done for now. Going back to Bitcoin here real quick. I do want to, you know, kind of remind us of the big picture here on the weekly chart here. That's why it's not finding it. So if we go back to the weekly chart, you know, prices still relatively, you know, small movements compared to what we saw during the early part of last year when we had that big rally multi-week. Keep in mind that this is week one of a potential start of something, right? I mean, notice 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 prior weeks of tight action, potential accumulation. You had some pullbacks that were quickly bought up on the weekly. And if it closed here, this would be positive from the sense of the weekly closing prices finally moving out of a range here, getting back above the 10 EMA. Now, the moving averages are still bearishly correlated, but that's positive to see that, hey, maybe this is going to finally start turning the corner. Does it mark the low going into the halvening? Who knows? It's certainly possible that December was a good bottoming process, but there's also this big kind of symmetrical pattern to continue or to consider as we continue to head into that halving time frame. And looking at it from this perspective, right, if we drop the lows of December and it continues lower, then that lower trend line is going to be really what I want to see hold for this pattern to start playing out here. You know, and that would be something like this, right? If you see a drop, you know, that 5,500 mark would be your absolute most that you want to see it drop. And then ideally, right, start rallying into that happening. So it's just an interesting setup to be watching for the big picture. I mean, you look at where this pattern culminates right here. It's like going basically through 2020. But generally, they break out before they hit that apex there. So just something to be watching on the very high time frames for Bitcoin there. All right, so we're going to look at some alts here. There's quite a few big cap names trying to show some life versus Bitcoin finally. Litecoin, Bitcoin Cash, handful of names. Let's look at some of those here. Before we do, I want to remind everybody that the coupon code is valid through January if you're looking to check out the Node Insiders site and get access to some of these metrics and email alerts when the bot status changes and all that. Check that out. I believe I put that in the video notes here. Code is 2020. You'll get $20 off your first payment. And certainly you can cancel at any time you'd like. So let's go take a look at some of these names here. So on the trending list here today, Bitcoin SV, Bitcoin Cash SV, Bitcoin Cash, REN has been on there for most of the week. Lend is back on. Litecoin popping on the list here today. Dash has looked pretty good. Monero has kind of been on the list for a while. Lisk was showing some action here yesterday. I'm not liking the way it's looking today, but we'll take a look at that one. And then GoChain. So that's interesting. The bot status is still long on the daily. It did go flat, basically closing out a trade yesterday. Was it yesterday? Wednesday or Wednesday evening. But I'm expecting that might turn back into long again here today. This was showing caution yesterday. The daily BMI was at 95. That's still the same, but the 4-hour had taken quite a dip. I think it was down to the 15 level when I looked at it yesterday, which quickly turned this into kind of yellow caution. Then it went green today, and then right before the stream I noticed it popped back into that blue. So just real interesting. And I recorded a tutorial on this, how I use it yesterday. That should be up shortly today for the insider subscribers, which will, I'm just going to keep recording some new tutorials on the new site explaining how I use some of these metrics here. So all in all, positive for Bitcoin. Let's see if the alt can finally show a little bit of life versus Bitcoin here. So looking at Litecoin first, and I'm going to be looking at these from the BTC perspective for the most part. But we can certainly switch to USD pairs. So looking at Litecoin, showing some good life today here. Was looking positive at the start of the week. This was one of the names that I was liking, and then just sold off hard as Bitcoin had that rally, but is recovering pretty good here so far. Now, it's been all over the place here. It certainly undercut some key levels during this process, right? You can see that big wick below that took out those levels, and if you were taking out this level as well. So certainly undercut quite a bit, but the fact that it very quickly reversed and then on some strong volume is very positive. Back above this range, I would consider that a breakout. And if you move this line here and just go to the exact tops there, that's your breakout point right there. So far looking pretty good here. Next major resistance around that 615 level on the BTC pair. But if we go back to the daily time frame, this is potentially the start of a little bit of a low being set here. This is the daily chart. So, basically since mid-December, finding a little bit of a low, trying to get back above. If it can take out that 615 level, things start to look a lot more positive at that point. And, I'd start to look for some backfilling and a little bit of pause setting up for another leg. But so far, Litecoin is maybe cautiously, very cautiously optimistic, finding a near-term bottom. But I mean, just keep in mind the macro picture, right? Just brutal pullback, maybe found a low here, try to rally, nope, big pullback. So, in the big picture, this is just kind of a near-term potential low, maybe just a little bit of a counter trend rally at most. Does it set a lower high, right? That's been the pattern for months, but so many of these alts are just beaten down, very oversold versus Bitcoin. I'm thinking we're due for a good little bit of an alt rally, mini alt season, if you will. I hate to use that term now, alt season, just because we haven't really seen, an across the board macro alt versus BTC expansion phase. Most of it has just been short-lived, very few names at a time. So alt rally, but Litecoin, certainly one I'm going to be watching here in the next couple of days. Looking at it from the USD side, did pull back, held the moving averages on that daily time frame, popping right off there. Good volume coming in, and testing the next resistance level around 49 bucks. And so a little bit of a reversal happening. Next target up is around $54 or so on the Litecoin. All right, Bitcoin Cash. So keep in mind, when these big cap names are rallying versus Bitcoin, we're going to see that BTC dominance chart start to fall off again, which, ideally, best case scenario would be Bitcoin dominance starts to drop while the Bitcoin price goes up, because then that means that you're getting some good action on the alts. Looking at Bitcoin Cash, now this is interesting here. Big base being formed here over the last 6 months, and it's testing that resistance level again. We saw it wick right up to that point here today, pausing, but man, that'd be a nice little bit of a breakout. If you look at it on the weekly chart here, let's go to the weekly. Potential reversal pattern being set up here, a little bit of a base on that weekly chart, and once it breaks out above that, there's room to run. It probably can run up to around here before you start to see the next level of resistance. And so certainly one to be watching here. That'd be your first major target on the weekly. And then in and around that level, how much are we talking about here versus Bitcoin? It's about 30%. Not too shabby. And if it hits the next target up, that's about a 50% move versus BTC here. So Bitcoin Cash showing some life here off the lows. I don't know what's driving this. I haven't been keeping tabs on this project. I don't, all I know is that, yeah, Burger King wants to take Bitcoin Cash and maybe some Dash in some foreign countries. But, I mean, really, is that enough to drive this? Are we all going to just scramble to go buy some Bitcoin Cash so that we can spend it at Burger King? I doubt it. But, hey, we'll see what happens here. Nonetheless, it's just a chart setup here. Certainly worth noting here on the BTC pair. Let's see how it looks on the USD. Bitcoin Cash continues to trend higher, looking pretty good here. Halving in April. Okay, maybe that's the front running for the halving. Pulling back to the 10 EMA. Again, this was a throwback to the breakout point here for about 3 days, and looking like it's popping nicely on some good volume too, in line with Bitcoin. So Bitcoin Cash continues to lead the way, and it had already been on a little bit of a trending move here for the last week or so. Let me see here. We can look at Bitcoin Cash SV, but do we really want to here? Let's look at it very quickly. I mean, it's similar action. Big pop, big breakouts there. Massive volume coming in. The thing with Bitcoin SV that I'm hesitant about is the lack of exchanges supporting it now, right? Generally, these big cap names, you want to see them relatively accessible, not just on 2 or 3 dominant exchanges. And I know Binance has that same issue with some of its altcoins where it predominantly trades on just that exchange. But something like Bitcoin SV, Bitcoin Cash, right? They're pretty. Bitcoin Cash, for example, is pretty accessible on just about any major exchange. Bitcoin SV is not. So just something to make note, especially for U.S. based traders. I mean, it's not as accessible just because Polo's done and Bitfinex doesn't allow U.S. based traders. So Binance delisted them. Anyway, on to the next one here. So we looked at that. Let's take a quick peek at REN. I know that one's been on the list here for most of the week, and this was actually one of the breakout ones that we looked at the start of the week. One of the few alts that actually held up versus Bitcoin and lived to fight another day. But even if I would have taken this trade, it would have stopped me out because at the start of the week, we were looking at it here, looked like it was about to break out. And so in theory, I would have been in here and out there. So I would have been stopped out anyway had I taken this trade. But notice how quickly it did recover. You could have waited for this little breakout to be recaptured here and re-entered here, and now you're at the first target, right into, actually hit the second target. That's this guy back here. So it hit the first 2 targets there, and then next major target is up here near that 600 sat level. So far so good on that guy, but I didn't take that trade. That was not something I was in there. But hey, REN still marching along here. We looked at Litecoin. Let me see here. Land popping off the lows again here. That one's been on a little bit of a move already anyway, but Land, hey, that's not a bad little setup here. Potential breakout there, popping here, making a higher low. Maybe we take out to that, what is that, 255 or so. Next target above that would be, the prior highs around 300. On a percentage basis, though, that's a big move. That's 20%. Small cap names, though. GoChain, Dash. Let's see, Dash. Maybe the pullback's over for Dash. Was a prior leader on the way up from the lows here. Had a nice rally. Went right to resistance, pulling right back and popping off the lows here today. Not a lot of volume, though. I would have liked to see something like this, right, where that first move off the low had a good volume. Would have liked to see some of that show up here when it made this second leg up. That would have been much more convicting of a bounce off the lows. This one's hard because all these big wicks, it just moves so wide and loose, right? Plus or minus 5, 6, 7, 8% is not unusual for this one right here. But if you zoom out, look at the daily chart. Can't argue, right? Rallied, pulled right back to the moving averages. Look at that again, held right at the moving averages for about 2 days. and then popped right off there. So not a bad little secondary entry throwback there. How does it look on the USD side? Because I know Dash was getting hammered for a while. Looking much better on the USD pair. So you had the breakout here. Big rally, pulling back right to the moving averages. Good little trend following strategy there, buying the dip, if you will, and looking for that second leg up. So not too bad. Next target, if it can take out 58 or so and start holding above 58. Let me see here. We're looking at, well, there's a little bit of a zone here. So, I mean, anywhere between here up to around 68 and then 75 would be kind of the next major ones. But you're going to have some resistance along the way up. But not too bad. Dash. If you're on the Dash, congrats. The cost of a Dash masternode just went from $40,000 to $55,000. All right, let's see what else we have going on here. Dash, we looked at, I didn't look at Lisk. I was watching it yesterday. Honestly, I took a quick scalp and then I wussed out and I said, I don't like this one, and I closed it out. I'm kind of glad I did. It was just a little pop and drop. These are just so hard to tell. What I was looking at was it had this big spike yesterday and it started to rally, and I saw it holding on the moving average there on the short time frame. I thought, hey, maybe we get another quick pop, make a lower high, and then it pulls back. And then it kind of just went sideways and it made a little bit, and I thought, I'm getting out of this one. And then it dropped, and then it popped, and I said, oh, crud, and then it dropped. And so there you have it. The mind of a chaotic trader. But just not my cup of tea, generally speaking. I'm always suspect of these moves off the lows, especially when they come off of the all-time lows, right? That Lisk was just making new all-time lows and then just a sudden pop. Just, you know, you're betting against the trend here. It's just really tough to take those trades, so I don't generally like to. Monero. Is Monero still going? Yeah, yeah, those sideways movements are tough because, you know, generally we like momentum, right? We want to see something pop and then start going, see some follow through and, you know, sell into the momentum, that sort of thing. When it starts to chop and flop, I'll either lighten up or I'll just wait and get out of the way. Monero, look at that. Monero ran right up to that level and is just taking a breather here for now. Certainly one to keep an eye on. Pulling back, the moving averages are down here. Maybe it closes the gap. Needs a little bit more time. One to watch for a breakout, but it's always interesting to see how it just like runs right up and then pauses. So like from a trading perspective, right, if you're taking this reversal off the lows, you know, going into this resistance is where you start to either tighten the stops or book some gains and then wait for it to do something to reload, or just that's the end of the trade, right? And that's just a simple range trade play. Support, resistance. I keep harping on that just because, you know, I use indicators too. Indicators are great. I've got my fancy bull momentum index and I use that for trading bots and all that. But, you know, at the end of the day, simple horizontal price, support, resistance, all that good stuff. It's just paramount when it comes to trading, and it's any market, not just crypto. It's all markets will respect certain price levels. If you didn't know, on the new Node Insider site, their education tab, there's a bunch of videos that are free. You don't have to be a subscriber to watch. And one of them is support and resistance here. So I have cardinal rules to technical analysis right here. Support and resistance. It's a 24-minute video talking about just, you know, some rules that I use on how to use support resistance, when they matter, when they don't. So check that out if you have some time. That's a free video, access to anybody. You can stream it. nodeinsiders.com, education. And then the volume class, I believe, is free as well. So just a little side note there. Chainlink. Yeah, let's go look at Chainlink because I'm still holding a little bit of Link. Let's see here. Whoops. Link. Come on, Link. So I like Link here. It's been reversing. It was one of the few names that was holding up relatively well when Bitcoin was pulling back here for the last few days. So, well, excuse me, when Bitcoin rallied, the alts got hit. When Bitcoin pulled back, the alts got hit, right? And Link was one of those that just kind of held its ground. So it came on my radar. I was liking it. I talked about the bot status being still strong on that one. So I liked it. I started to accumulate some positions a couple of days back and still holding it. We'll see how it goes. I saw it pop right over here. This was my first target, that 2800 as the breakout point, but I didn't book any because I want to see it get above it and hold on the daily level. And you can see that's, it had that brief shakeout pulling right back. So I'm watching it today to see if it can continue to hold up as these moving averages start to catch up to it. Going to the daily chart on link. Well, excuse me, before we do the daily chart, above that, this is kind of your next level, 29.5, and then 31, basically, so 310 would kind of be my next major targets here. Daily chart, let's see how that one lines up. Daily chart, so that 310, 315 would be your major swing high, and then up here after that. I'm wondering if this most recent bounce lines up with the fib level bounce. It kind of does, yeah. 618 retracements right on the mark there. So you can see this most recent swing high right to the 618. So interesting. We'll see if it can break above that. If it starts to just flop and chop here and do one of these, I'll tighten up the stop and see if it can pop above the line over the weekend. I generally like to lighten up over the weekend just because it's kind of my rest days. At least, late Saturday. I'll do a little bit on Saturday early in the day, but after that, afternoon through Sunday, I generally just like to take a break from the charts and then come back fresh on Monday. Crypto has no sleep. All right, let's see. So let me pop this over here. So if we do market rating and then we sort by name, Link still bullish, Monero, EOS. Let's go look at EOS. Let's see here. Dash strong, Litecoin strong. So it's good to see some stuff not all in the red. Things turning the corner here from weak to at least caution. We'll see how that looks. Let's go look at EOS. EOS. Nice little move here the last couple of candles coming off the lows. I was liking EOS at the start of the week as well. Probably one of my top watch items. At the start of the week, keep in mind, this is how it looked, right? It was looking like, hey, this guy wanted to break out, was getting ready to go. It was looking like this. All was well, had a rally, a little bit of a consolidation, potentially continuation pattern. Boom, started to go. And then Bitcoin said, watch out, get out of my way. Bam. Smacked all of the alts. They couldn't keep up. But this one's recovering quickly. We'll see how far this bounce goes. What I'd like to see on something like EOS is I'd like to see this bounce maybe right to this prior point where it broke down from, and then backfill a little bit and then get going. And if it does that, then I'm going to be looking for that little pause, consolidation, maybe a bull flag or an ascending base or something. And then that would be kind of a good setup to look for a secondary entry, maybe another shot at this breakout here that it was trying to do at the start of the week. So that's what I'd be looking for there. And again, on the daily chart, that's just kind of a big resistance zone. So if it starts to take that on the daily, has some levels to go up to before it takes another breather. So big picture again, some of these alts look like they may be putting in a big low versus Bitcoin here after a big downdraft. I mean, look at these charts. They just look brutal here if you've just been holding blindly since June. Big pullbacks. Been a wild ride for sure, but longer term, hey, maybe we're starting to see some lows being set. I'm optimistic. All right, let's look at a few more, my friends. What else do we have on the list here? We've got Tezos. We'll look at that guy. You guys want to look at Atom, VeChain. We'll certainly look at those. I'm going to make some notes here because I'll forget. I do that often. I say, yeah, we'll look at that one next. And then I say, all right, see you later. And it's not personal. It's just, I forget. All right. Let me check here real quick before we look at those. I want to see if there's anything else that I want to see. We looked at Link, Dash. We looked at Litecoin. Some good coin names. Pocket Pivot on Ontology. Neo Pocket Pivots. Oh, is that USD? No, it's BTC. Okay, certainly worth looking at. Bitcoin Cash on the move. Zcash on the move. What? Zcash. Yeah, Zcash was on the move. Nice. Nice. All right, let's see what else here. EOS. Cool. All right. So let's see here. I'm going to just do Neo Ontology and we'll get to the other ones there. Just BTC and Tezos. No need to look at alts today. You know, that's partly true, man. For the last couple of months, you just BTC. Poor alts. Poor alts. Let's see here. Yeah, maybe a little bit of a power pivot here on Neo. Not too strong just yet. It's still below some prior support, then resistance, then support. So got to get back above that. That was a big drop on volume here this week. So many names just got hammered after looking good. This was a fake out on Neo, by the way. It was looking like a nice breakout. That would have probably been the breakout point here, this entry, the early entry. Big pop, was looking positive, and then just the Bitcoin rally smacked it down. Trying to recover right now. Ontology. Ontology. I've never liked that name, by the way. It sounds too formal. Ontology. That's a pretty decent power pivot. Engulfing candle, too. Big pop related. Like to see more volume on that one, but how much time is this? There's 2 hours left to the close for this 4-hour candle. Yeah, certainly one to watch. Again, coming off the lows, I mean, this is just, it could just bounce right to the support and then turn tail and keep dropping, making lower lows and lower highs. So, you know, by no means is this like, wow, look at this bullish reversal. It's maybe, right? And it lines up pretty good with this prior low way back here. So, something to note if you like it. All right, let's see. You know, it's a good question. Some of those privacy coin pumps related to Iran. You know, that's not. I hadn't thought about that. Don't know. I mean, that's they tend to run in sequence. You know, together. I've noticed. You have the Monero was kind of leading the way, which by the way is kind of my favorite all around privacy coin. Then you had Zcash, right? Pivx kept showing up on the trending list here off and on for a while. Let's see here. I mean, for a while the privacy coins looked like they were just going to be done, largely because so many exchanges were saying, yeah, you can't even trade them anymore, we're not going to allow them. They were delisting some of these names, and so there was a lot of pressure on them. But they're not all across the board, but certainly the bigger ones are running. Wouldn't surprise me though with some of the pressure, and a lot of countries, I mean, they still use those. So XTZ. Tezos. All right, so let's zoom out here. Go to the daily chart. Ooh, look at that. Right to the 618 retracement on this pullback. Remember when Tezos was done? I got lucky on that chart. I posted this little distribution chart. I said, yeah, most likely done for now. I didn't think it'd come back that far. I thought, hey, look for this as a level to bounce. But look at this. I mean, another lesson in support and resistance. Oops, not that. I mean, it came right back, broke below, rallied, and then just couldn't recapture that prior support, now resistance, and then dropping another level. But here it is, bouncing off the 618. I would like to see this one turn first before I got too excited about it, just because the broader trend is still very much downward. The moving averages are bearishly correlated. Price is still trading below even the 10 EMA on the daily. Yeah, there's a little bit of a potential candle pattern there that's trying to show some life. Not a lot of volume. I would have liked to see more volume on that one, but got to see that trend turn first here. On the 4 hour, same thing, lower lows, lower highs. Getting back above was at 1740 or so would maybe start to signal first potential switcheroo there. Hash ribbons. No, I have seen those. I don't use them. I mean, there's a lot of those, like, the network value and the hash rates and the hash ribbons and all that. I don't know. I haven't seen too much. I haven't looked into that too much to make sense of any correlation. I mean, the question is always like, how do you use something like that, right? What are your signals? What are you looking for? Do you just wait for the extremes like you do on Bollinger Bands, or there's never going to be just like one indicator that is going to give you the perfect always entry and exits. And that's just the nature of indicators, because indicators are just tools and they work differently in different scenarios. So in a trending market, certain indicators are much better. In a sideways market, low volatility market, other indicators are much better than the trending ones. Oscillators, that sort of thing, volatility measurements. So it just depends, right? On moving averages help when you're trending. So there's like no bulletproof indicator that's going to work 100% in every market environment. And keep in mind, the market's doing one of three things at all times. It's either expanding, it's trending higher, it's either consolidating, going sideways, maybe distribution, or it's pulling back, right? And that's really it. And there's going to be different type of indicators for the different scenarios depending on which one you're in. And let's see, we got some indicators coming, some alerts coming through here. Link, we looked at that guy. Tron, pocket pivot. Yep, a little bit of a pocket pivot on Tron. Again, probably the thing on Tron is just watching this broader downtrend. If it starts to take out that upper resistance downtrend line, then maybe something to note. There's a slight divergence showing up here. Not a massive one, but it's worth noting. You've got a higher RSI on this most recent swing low. So maybe, but I'd wait for that downtrend to be taken out. Yeah. All right, let's see what else. Anything else you guys want to look at? BTC. ETH. Did we look at ETH? We did not. Apologize. All right. ETH, look at that. Man, I like the way that ETH and Litecoin are playing out here. ETH looks like a nice little double bottom forming on that daily chart. Well, not a nice one. I mean, this one big red candle, but big hammer reversal there on the low on the highest volume in the past 2 weeks or so. So that's positive. Still below major moving averages. But, you got this potential Eve Atom double bottom here. And your first target would be the neckline, which is there. So if you liked it here, I mean, it's probably a 1-to-1, I'm betting. 1-to-1, not even a 1-to-1. It's less than a 1 to that point. So you'd have to go tighter with maybe like today or yesterday's swing low. That gives you a 1.5. And then if it breaks out, a measured move target puts you at, extrapolate that out from the breakout, puts you there, which lines up pretty nicely with some prior resistance. So yeah, not too shabby here on the ETH BTC. Hey, maybe these alts finally get some life and we see some bounces off of these lows here. So for a swing trade, longer position trade, this might not be a bad one to look at there. Falling wedge breakout on the USD side. Let's go look at that. Woo! Look at my ugly markups. Let me find a clean chart. There we go. Yeah, I mean, you can argue that broader downtrend here. That's what I'd be looking at more, is this bigger trend line there. I mean, the thing with trend lines, they're just so subjective, right? To use the wicks, to use the candle body closes. Are you logarithmic? Are you not? But I, certainly wouldn't argue against it based on the recent price action. It is trying to turn the corner here. Are you talking about IBD lows, like should always undercut? Short answer is no, they don't have to. I think those are stronger ones, especially if there's a bullish divergence showing up on the double bottom. Those are much stronger. And the reason I like those is because it lines up well with a false breakout reversal strategy that I like to use. And it's very similar to that. So if we look at BTC here, for example, we'll look at it on Coinbase. What I like to look at is this, right? When you have the way the false breakout reversal works is you have a line in the sand, if you will, right? A level of support you're watching. And if it takes it out, when it quickly gets right back above that line, if there's a bullish divergence, showing up, this one didn't have it, but when you see that, especially like on a double bottom or something, then that's where I like to take a shot at it, right? When it recaptures, especially like this, when there's big volume, big bullish engulfing, that's a nice recapture. If it's a slow grind and then it like pops and fakes you out, not as nice, but when it's something like that, much better. But going back to the other one here, ETH BTC, going to the daily chart. Where are we at here? There's a bullish divergence showing up here on the RSI. Let me zoom that up for you guys there. Much more prominent now. So you can see the RSI certainly has not made a new lower low. Price wasn't drastically lower, but it was nice because it was a shakeout. It briefly undercut, left a big reversal doji hammer on there, and then now it's starting to push higher, right? Haven't seen confirmation yet. Would certainly like to see more volume on the buy side, but wouldn't argue against it here. It's not too bad. Again, this is reversal trading, not as high probability as trading with the trend and buying breakouts and all that, but also a double bottom potentially forming on the weekly chart, and at that point, your neckline is way up here, and so you could see a push up to that level. And that one also has a divergence showing, right? You got this showing up here, both on the RSI and the MACD. There's a small, you probably can't even see it on the live stream, there's a small, tiny red histogram popping at the bottom there on the weekly. But potential double bottom forming here. Again, you could have argued that back in here. Obviously, that didn't work out. You could have argued that here. That didn't work out. So it's hard to say when you're trending against a trend, because the broader trend often prevails and you get lower lows and lower highs until it doesn't. Okay. Hey, well, I think that may be it. Let's go look at BTC here one last time. We'll look at a few, zoom in here a little bit. I'm still thinking it looks pretty good on the daily. I like the setup, just the throwback entry. It's going to need to overcome this most recent wick high that we saw. When was that, Wednesday or Thursday? Just because the volume associated that was much higher than the prior days. So, that's a little bit of a red flag, if you will. There was a lot of distribution up at that level, a lot of sellers showing up there. So just something to watch. But if you see a big green candle here in the next couple of days, then next target's up 8,600, and then 9K is kind of your first near-term targets. And above that, you got a big wall at around 9,500. This guy right there. So those would be my next major targets. On the downside, I like these moving averages if they can continue to hold on the daily. So at most, don't want to see it take out 7,500. Best case scenario, it doesn't take out today's low. So the swing low of today around 76 and change, that should hold. That'd be the best case scenario, because then it holds above this breakout point. It makes up for a nice throwback. Doesn't violate anything on the 4-hour charts. Keeps this swing low in play, and so that'd be ideal if it doesn't take that low out. Let me see here. Wyckoff accumulation theory. It does. There is an argument to be made that that's what we're seeing here. Personally, and I don't have anything against Wyckoff or anything like that, or the theories that I don't. But it's just not one of those things I use personally. Just like Elliott wave, I don't use Elliott waves, but that's just me. I keep it simple. Except for my complicated BMI matrix. Not too simple. What else? VeChain Atom. We'll call it done after that. VeChain. back to the throwback. Same here. I want to see that downtrend taken out, so I think we covered that on Monday when we did the live stream. Looks like a little descending triangle here, about to pop to the downside, so I'd be careful. Same with BAT. I think we were looking at BAT as a potential breakdown point, and man, did it break down. I said on Monday here, I said, I don't know, it looks vulnerable here. And look at this. Look what happened. It dropped, rallied right to that breakdown point, couldn't, and then boom, another drop. So, and Atom. Now, Atom was listed on Coinbase. Does Coinbase still have the power to pump? Not really. You see those little Coinbase listings, and they don't really do much anymore like they used to. But nonetheless, pretty good action there, coming off of a little bit of a bounce here. But, you know, big picture here, this one was already a nice run. I think it needs more time, personally. Some sideways action would be better here at this point. You know, look at today's daily candle. It tries to rally, pulls right back, still below the moving averages. So I think it just needs a little bit more time to consolidate. Bitcoin back at 80.44, continues to power higher here. I'm expecting the 4-hour will go back to long again here today, if it hasn't already. It went long over the weekend, last weekend, which was a nice signal because then it caught that move on the trading bots, and then it finally closed it out. Oh, there it is. So this current candle will trigger it. If price closes above 8,100, that'll see a trigger. So the subscribers will get an email when this more looks like it just switched today. It switched at the start of the stream because it was flat when I did that. Let me check my email. I bet you it came through. Let's see. Yeah, it did. 30 minutes ago. Okay. All right, so that's going to be it for today, my friends. I'm going to post that video on common pitfalls just because it's a good reminder for me, and it's a good reminder, I think, for anyone learning how to trade, because trading is not as easy as it may appear at first, and largely because of psychology and risk management disciplines. I mean, to be honest, you know, the chart reading, I can certainly show you guys how to do that. I can show you some strategies that I like to employ, but the second guessing and the drawdowns and wanting to not give back profits and all of that stuff is really what makes it tough. And I think we need to remind ourselves of that very often. You know, and even just journaling and keeping notes about your trading is very helpful. One thing I like to do is from time to time, if I have a rough week, especially, what I'll do is I'll pull up some of my trades, then I'll mark up the charts where I went in, where I went out, maybe put some notes around what I was thinking or liking at the time. And it's very enlightening sometimes. You look at some of your charts and you're like, what was I thinking? It's like, I was buying at the top and selling at the exact bottom and doubling down. Like, what was going on with me? And, and oftentimes you start to look back and say, okay, that was just pure nonsense. I was pressing. I was trying to get back my losses. I was, over trade, whatever, right? Not following any strategy. And you got to do that sometimes. And, don't beat yourself up too much. But it's the only way you're going to improve. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Okay, guys, that's going to be it for today. I appreciate all the comments. Appreciate you guys listening in today. I think I caught most of the names on the chat room here. I'm trying to look back real quick. But, yeah, I think I found everything. So have a wonderful rest of your day. Have a great weekend, everybody. And we'll see you in the next one. Take care, everyone.